Welcome to Verify in Field, the Millwork podcast. Here's Jacob.
Welcome back, everybody, to Verify in Field. Today, I have Chris Brooks with us. He is division president at Wood Systems out in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we go back, spend some time together, working together at USA Millwork. And so, Chris, thank you for joining me today and coming on and talk about what you're doing.
Thanks for having me. I've been following the podcast for a while now, and it's as fragmented as our industry is sometimes, it's nice to have something like this that can bring us together and, talk about, we all have the same problems, I think. So,
yeah, awesome. That's what I hear a lot with people who listen to this, I think. And that was my goal with doing this, is getting people in our industry. It's very compartmentalized, like you said, and secretive a little bit. Everybody feels alone, but there's so many of us that are struggling with the same things. Mm-hmm. Well, to get started, if you don't mind, maybe telling us a little bit about your background. How did you first get into the millwork industry?
So I started in the millwork industry. I have a little bit of an interesting, I'm going to say a little bit of a later start. I started out in, actually in the full service restaurant industry for many years. I went from a dishwasher at the age of 13 to general manager of a full service steak restaurant. So I was in the restaurant industry for a while, left that place, went and ran a national brand for 5 years. And that's where I learned a lot about business and everything. But then my kids got to a school age and I was working nights and weekends. And I said, you know what, this just isn't working for my family life. So I need to do something different. Yeah. And I always loved woodworking. And I started seeking out, hey, how can I do this as a profession? Had a company give me a shot. I was a guy that ran restaurants and I want to come in and be a custom benchman. And I had to show them that I had the skills and they gave me the opportunity. So started as a custom benchman, worked my way up through a department lead, assembly supervisor, machine room supervisor, plant manager. Really spent the first 11 years all on the 11 years of my millwork industry experience on the operations side. So had the opportunity to bring 2 facilities together there as well, laid out a 250,000 square foot facility with machines and everything. Got a lot of experience and exposure because I started with a company that was small, family owned, was bought by a large corporation and was going through a massive growth cycle. And my business management experience and my woodworking capabilities just meshed, and I was able to progress through a lot of positions really very rapidly, in our industry. So take that all the way through. I was plant manager and then ended up as a technical services manager, which I had engineering, purchasing, and production planning underneath my scope, and really rounded out my operational side of the business. Ended up leaving there and made the leap to project management. And wow, that was a lot. That's a bigger change than I thought it was going to be. And so then I spent the next, 8 years in the project management side, managing my own projects, and I learned a lot, ran small projects, large projects, multiple projects, over a period of time, managed through the 2008/2011 downturn in the project management realm, which taught me a lot as well. And came out the back end of that. You said, we did work at USA Millwork together, went to the project executive side of things and ran the project management team, and then moved over back to operations and ultimately was a director of operations, and rounded everything out there, so kind of did the full circle. I did operations, did the project management side of things, and then ended up back in operations. And then decided to take an adventure and move to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Came down here as director of operations for a short stint before taking over as division president, as my predecessor stayed inside our parent company, but went to go lead our largest segment of the business and gave me the opportunity to then take over Wood Systems. So very briefly, that kind of, explains my full tenure in the industry. So.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I didn't know that about you. You started in food and beverage. My first job was also washing dishes at 13.
Yeah.
And I worked food and beverage through high school and college. And I can't imagine, doing that while having kids. That is a tough industry in its own right. But I And I've always said that I think if you can make people happy serving them food, you can kind of do anything customer service related.
No, I absolutely
And that
agree.
is some great experience.
I learned a lot about managing people, customer interactions, managing vendors. I really learned a lot of my business, side of things in the restaurant business.
Yeah.
I also have a saying that if you can survive a Friday night in the kitchen, you can do damn near anything in life.
Yeah.
So our head recruiter actually knows that anybody that has restaurant experience on their resume, and even though if they're applying for a position that they may not fit, I want to talk to them. And I've actually heard a lot of people and given people a chance because of that on their resume and not necessarily their woodworking skills. So,
Yeah, that is a very unique set of experiences working in food and beverage. It's almost like military. You kind of know that if people have done some time there, they're going to have some valuable skills.
absolutely.
All right. So that is a huge, quick rundown, but that's a great deal of experience that I would not have imagined you could have that many stints, that many time experience. I would have thought you were much younger than being able to have that much time.
Really early. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So you're currently leading Wood Systems, and since you've been there, now you're going through another integration of two facilities and bringing them together, right, as one business, one company. So can you talk a little bit about those unique challenges that come with multi-site? Particularly, there's, and I know you and I've experienced this in the past, and you've got a lot of experience now with this because you've got different cultures that you're integrating towards one set of goals, as well as technical processes, means and methods, operational stuff that's already ingrained there. Talk about the unique challenges and how you guys are traversing those things.
yeah, I think successful acquisition and merger, it all starts with the people, hands down. And the reason why this has been so successful for us is we acquired another building and additional machinery and additional capacity, but it came with a lot of really good people. And knowing that up front was really the only reason why we were interested in doing. And so realizing that piece of it, then you can jump into looking at the basics. Is the ERP software similar, the same, different? Is the engineering platforms? What differences do you have? The manufacturing processes, everywhere from nested based, cut bamboo, installation processes. We were shipping out of two facilities to the same install group. It needs to look the same, so they're not having two sets of standards. So start looking at all of those things. And when we first did the acquisition, I said, you know what, let's don't change too much too fast. We acquired a very healthy company. I mean, it was the right time. Their ownership wanted to leave. We wanted to grow. They didn't need to be, in air quotes, fixed, right? It wasn't broken. But we did a lot of things very similar, but we did a lot of things different. With us, both facilities are in Tulsa, so regionally, we traded some people back and forth over the years. So we had some similar processes, but we had some very distinct differences as well. So we really got in there, we ingrained ourselves, we learned, means and methods, how, and looked for the similarities first. And said, okay, how can we grow on those similarities? And then really dive into, okay, what are the differences, and do they matter now, or is it one of those things that we need to fix in the future? There's a couple things that we needed to tweak now, and that was more on the estimating side, because you got to start at the very beginning with at least the same set of data of, okay, we're going to win this job with this many production hours, and an hour is an hour in both facilities. So you can plan the capacities. We have the exact same capabilities in both facilities, which is nice. So when, I'll fast forward a little bit to today, we're able to bid a job. And then once it's won, we decide what manufacturing facility we're going to do it in based off of capacity. Whereas 18 months ago, even though we were working in the same ERP, the downstream information was split entirely different. If it was bid in one location, that's where we had to produce it.
Right.
So we tackled that piece first of understanding the differences and deciding what is it that we needed to change.
So starting with the changes to process and the way you do business at the beginning of a project life cycle versus starting at the end. Because I think that's what most people think of, like, okay, if I'm buying a second shop or I'm integrating two shops, is you start with the end of like, okay, how do we do nailers? How do we assemble cabinets? How do we do that? Right. But that happens at the end of the project life cycle anyways. And it does make sense to start at the beginning of, if you're going to change processes, how do we get the inputs looking, feeling, smelling, being the same, right?
Yes.
And then it allows you to follow that and see where you actually need to change things. Because I know that, like you said, okay, 18 months ago, if you're bidding a job, you were bidding it by which shop it was going to go to. That's essentially starting like you're still two different business units, just like before acquisition. So the first thing being to say, okay, how do we leverage that we have extra capacity regardless of how we bid the job or what the job is? We want to be able to make the decision as far down the life cycle as possible of where it's going to be built, basically, right?
And doing it that way, it also allowed us to really start looking at, the other processes that were different. And notice I say different, not right or wrong.
Right.
We, in our industry, across the board, everybody's come up with what we think is the best way, and I have fun, arguing with other people in the industry about the best way of different things. And I say argue, but it's more about, John Van Aram, which we both know. We love to have what we call wood nerd discussions, and we just talk back and forth. And what's the differences? What's the best way and why, and how do we get there? And there's no right or wrong. And that's the best part, is there really isn't a right or wrong. It's just, that's what worked for this facility because of a unique set of circumstances or whatever it may be.
Right.
And going all the way back to the very beginning of starting with the same data input and building a job, we can really then start focusing in on best practices and saying, you know what? There are a lot of things that we adapted from one to the other and vice versa, but there's a lot of processes where we actually melded the best of both worlds together. And that's where I think we're really, achieving some really high marks right now. Is it's the blend, and because there wasn't a right and a wrong. So,
right. So what you described as, one of the first things you had to do was, okay, how do we estimate everything the same way? Both in the composition of hours, mean hours in both places, and being able to say this job isn't predetermined where it has to be built based on how it's estimated. So did that lead to how you integrated first, starting with ERP and your estimating software? Or were there other factors or things that you had, like business decisions you had to think about when you're integrating, right? You could have started with a lot of things. Was there anything else like that? Or did that lead your decision on, hey, we need to integrate our estimating and our ERP software first?
So it was definitely, we started there. I mean, the interesting part is we were on the same ERP platform to begin with. Okay. And both companies had been in that same software for many years, but approached it entirely different. And it got fragmented real fast from, yes, doing a takeoff, we can do the takeoff the exact same way, but it's the data input of knowing how many hours, how much material, where it's divvied up. And we went through the, the series of bidding multiple jobs in both systems, and the dollars were so close, believe it or not, at the end, but the other buckets of hours and material and everything else were all over the board.
Right.
So that's where we said we really need a focus to understand, because if we're not working with the same start data, then we can't then go into engineering and say, okay, how are we going to engineer this and engineer it the same with a different set of source data? So while we were figuring out the estimating piece of it, and we knew that was a challenge, then we started building in the back end of everything else and made sure that our engineering schedules were the exact same. So as the input was getting better, we were then using the same engineering schedule, the same manufacturing schedule, the same shipping schedule, the same installation schedule, in the same formats, that it was the same data. So as we were fixing the estimating piece of it, then we had the background that everything was flowing into what we have today. Is ultimately we're actually looking at being able to combine all of our scheduling, all of our capacity planning and everything else, and then just have a toggle of, we want to do it in manufacturing building A and manufacturing building B, and potentially even splitting up sections of projects is where we are at today, which is a great place to manage from, because we all know that capacity, it's finite. And once you miss out week over week, if you don't produce enough this week, well, it just snowballs in the next week and continues on. So we focus really hard on releasing the correct amount of shop hours every single week. That way, so then we need to release that same amount of shop hours to the engineering department so we can engineer that much per week. And then also, we need to purchase that much material also per week, and look at it in filling that capacity all the way through. That way we're able to level load the best that we can, and being able to decide what facility we're going to manufacture that in, and even divvy up a project has been pretty powerful for us. So.
Awesome. So can you talk a little bit about because when you have two companies that, are merging, obviously before merge, you have basically duplicates of everything, right? You have sales staff, you have estimators, you have project managers, you have engineers, you have production teams, you have right? And so obviously, naturally, as you're integrating these things, saying, okay, if we're going to estimate jobs the same, regardless of where they go, you're integrating those duplicate resources into one set of processors in one department, essentially, I would imagine. Uh-huh. How far down and how does that change as you go down the line, right? Because at some point you have two machines, you have to have two different operators in two buildings, right? That's a given. And if they're in two different buildings, you kind of have full assembly lines that continue to function apart from each other. But there is a line at some point where you decide, okay, do I have engineers that only engineer to this shop and engineers that only engineer to that shop, or can they be cross-trained? I always envisioned like a zipper, when we were at USAM, was like, I was trying to get that zipper zipped up as far down the line as I could to say, okay, we've got one path, let's split it at the last possible minute, right?
Yep.
But it has to split at some point, right? Material has to go here or there and has to come back here, right? So how do you think about that? And what are some of the maybe surprises or things that you didn't, going into it, you hadn't thought about, but now has turned out a different way?
So the approach that I took on that, or we took, was it started with me. I was in both buildings every single day for really 3 months, just learning the differences. And like I said, we didn't want to change too much too fast. I actually said, I don't want to change anything. So for 3 months, it was just, let's learn each other. Let's understand it. And then from there, I really focused in on the leadership. And we started with the estimating department. And I started looking at my leadership team and building my leadership team, that, okay, getting them responsibilities in both buildings. And how do I transition from that? And, there were some people that had to transition some roles in all of that, because I had two operations guys, right? So, both of them are still with me and doing outstanding. They're just doing different roles, right?
Right.
And now my leadership team they have duties in both buildings. All the staff reports to them from both buildings. And that way, truly from the very get-go, we can drive the change that we need to and make sure that, the departments are aligning. And then from there, after we got the leadership team, then let's start looking at best practices and then we start focusing in on processes. And, naturally you go right into the engineering and purchasing piece. Those are the first two steps. And we've done a pretty good job of being able to mix engineers back and forth after we have decided some of the best practices and say, okay, let's start gravitating towards, let's understand the differences. Let's change some of our construction standards so that now we have the one way instead of two separate ways. And I have engineers that jump back and forth between both buildings. I mean, geography helps because we're a 10-minute car ride. Right. It's not a plane ride or anything else. And it's easier, even though we could set up the IT that we'd be able to jump back and forth and be able to just, I've actually had people get in their car, come over and let's engineer it just so we can be thinking through, go talk to that saw operator, that CNC operator and say, hey, I'm getting ready to release this and this is how it is, how I'm going to release it. Has really also helped bring that culture together a little bit because they get the FaceTime, they get to see the other The small difference, sometimes the big differences are really easy to see. It's the really small things that actually can sneak up and bite you sometimes.
Right.
And getting that engineer and the guy out on the shop floor talking and understanding those small differences is, I think, also key in being able to do that. The purchasing piece is something that we just now this year, at the beginning of the year, put in that, okay, now we are looking at aligning our purchasing processes. That's actually one thing that we've pushed off, and make sure that we understand, because we have different sheet sizes that we're programming our CNCs with in both buildings. It may still be white melamine two-side, but a 4x8 platform in one and a 5x9 platform in another in a lot of instances. So now that you've got the engineering that's calling for the same thing, now we can start looking at purchasing the same thing and then divvying up, okay, what facility does it go to, and so on. The manufacturing piece is really, that is the decision step of where it splits.
Mm-hmm.
But because we are so close to each other, we've looked at, do we transfer a work order and we actually load up a bunch of material onto a box truck and send it over there to be cut on that saw? Or is it a saw capacity problem, or is it a bench capacity problem? Well, if it's a bench capacity problem, why load up the material and go cut it in the other facility? Well, it's bringing that benchman over to the other facility and built. So we've started trading back and forth some labor in the last few weeks. And that's also good because that's, again, the intermixing culture in everything. So it's a little bit trial by fire in some of this. I try not to, put too many rules on my team that we can't or we shouldn't. But at the same time, we need to know the whys behind it, explain it to our people. Why are we moving these items back and forth? What do we want to gain from it? And make sure that we go into it at least with a good understanding of what we want to get out of it. So.
Awesome. Are there any lessons learned or mistakes you've made since going through this transition process that you say, okay, yeah, we did this and that didn't work, so now we've learned this lesson and now we know? Like, are there some wounds you've had to lick or things that you've learned that you would be willing to share?
Where do I start? There's always those, right? I try to control out, delete them as quick as I can, but they, I would say, it's the installation side, I think, is really the biggest challenge, right? We have product leaving both facilities and getting in front of an installer. And once again, those small things make a big difference, how you build toe kick, how your wall cleat's done. It's the things that most people don't even see or don't understand, but it's step one for the installer. And if it's different out of both facilities,
mm-hmm.
you drive them crazy. And,
especially on the same job.
Exactly. And if we're splitting the job in between two facilities and they're going from room to room, and it's like, wait, that one's a little bit different than this one. Why? And at the end of it, it's going to look the same. All the aesthetics are going to be the same. It's going to be the same quality, but it may be a small change in operation for the installer. So I've been very mindful of listening to our installers, getting their feedback. We're probably like most companies, we have our in-house install crew and we subcontract a decent amount. It's about a, 40-60 split. So I need to be able to listen to what is a preference of an installer versus also what is a true difference, and pick a direction and say, okay, this is the way that we're going to do it, and explain the whys to everybody involved. And out of anything, I think that's the most important piece, is making sure that everybody understands the why we picked a best practice. Because it wasn't one was right, one was wrong. This is why we picked this, and it's best for manufacturing, best for install, best for customer, best for quality. And okay, so that's why we did it, and that's our new standard, and that's why we're going that direction.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that was always tough is, there's this inherent desire, and especially when you're dealing with the people who are invested in, like, well, I was a part of deciding why we do it this way, and the other group is a part of deciding why we do it that way. And it's not a one is better than the other, but having one is better than having two. in most instances, right? And having that, okay, we always know that we're going to do this the same way, and that people know when they're going to get a new job, how to prepare for, how to expect it. And so even if one is better, choosing the lesser of the two a lot of times is better if you do that consistently than jumping back and forth. And so I think that's the hardest part, is getting everybody to, even if you disagree, can we disagree but commit to one, and all agree that we're going to commit to a direction that is better for all of us if we don't have to answer this question again.
I think you hit the nail on the head with commit. You got to commit, and you got to move forward. We've got to be decisive, but you have to listen to everybody, and that's a tightrope, to be decisive and listen to everybody, make sure everybody's heard. So,
yeah, change management is a difficult process, and a lot of times, if as a leader, you go in and just kind of try to dictate, your people are not, like, you have to listen, like you said, and people have to be bought into the process. Sometimes that's slower, but in the long run, it's faster to have everybody bought in and committed to the same direction as a part of the process of change.
Absolutely.
Well, looking ahead, what do you see as, opportunities for wood systems moving forward? Obviously, it's a long and lengthy process of integrating two facilities, and there's a lot of change management that goes into that, and it takes time as you work through all of them. But ultimately, you guys wouldn't be doing this if there weren't opportunity that you see, which increased capacity, great people. What does the future hold? What do you see that you haven't got to yet that is coming?
I mean, the big part of the future is twofold. I want a place where our people can continue to grow. If the company's not growing, how can our people grow along with it? How's the guy that's out on the bench have the same opportunity to sit in my seat, 15 years from now? And if you're not growing, we just don't have the opportunities for the people that are coming in. We take a lot of pride in the length of tenure that people work at Wood Systems, and it's because of our growth path. And we're a growing company. We want to continue to grow, and it's not just grow for growth's sake. It's not just increase revenue, but it's developing the organization to be true to our values and our identity, so our people can grow. We can service our customers, which are also growing, and they've told us that they need us to grow so they can continue to grow. And it's creating that partnership. So that's what it's all about. That's why we're doing it. That's where we want to go. It truly is about being able to help serve our people and serve our customers, and give them the opportunity that we're hearing from them that they want. So,
yeah. I mean, that is a big piece of these growth stages and businesses that I think not a lot of people realize or maybe aren't conscious of. But obviously there are some inherent, changes that have to be made, but suddenly you have more opportunities for growth within the business. Like, you need twice as many machine operators, you need twice as many engineers, you need a lot of things that now suddenly, not only that, you need people to step into leadership positions. Like you said, you're building your leadership team, and as other people grow, it opens up new positions for the people below them to grow. So I think that is one of the things that, although for those listening, if you're either a part of a company that's acquiring or growing, I know it's a scary time for a lot of people that aren't sitting around the table knowing the deal being made, but it does create a great opportunity for everybody in the business to step into new roles and new opportunities to advance your career.
Mm-hmm.
Well, stepping outside of just Wood Systems, from your perspective, you've operated in multiple markets in the industry, in multiple industries, in multiple roles within the industry in those markets. How do you see our industry, the millwork industry as a whole, evolving, in the face of technological advancements and changing market demands? What do you see going forward for our industry?
So for our industry, I'll focus on two things. And I think we always hear it, the amount of automation that's going on and everything else, which is good, but we still need people to even run that automation. And we're asking people to sit in different seats to manage and run that automation. But we also we're a people business. Every business is a people business, but it boils down to, we are a people business, and it's how do we continue to show the younger generation that there's a future here? And I think that is something that I take a lot of pride in, and at Wood Systems and in our industry is trying to engage in much of that as possible, not just for Wood Systems, but for the industry as a whole. I work with multiple tech schools in our area. I give probably 10 or 12 tours through our facility each year. I go and speak to 4 different classes every year. We're very in tune with Pitt State and their wood manufacturing program. I always enjoy getting interns over the summer and bringing them in. And I know that every single one of those people that we talk to isn't going to work for Wood Systems. But I want them to all know that, from a guy that started out on the bench, has built a career, raised a family, and you can still do that in this industry. And I think that's where we need to focus as an industry, is on our people. Yes, automation is important, but it's the people that are going to make the difference. And that's where, so let me flip to our customers people now. So general contractors are my customer, and they're evolving. They're going through different changes. They're getting a lot of automation in their scheduling and in different processes that they have. And I've been trying to work with them to make sure that they understand that, we're a little unique in our industry, that we're a manufacturer and an installer. There's few other trades that are on these job sites that are both manufacturer and installers. So for us, schedule is everything. We all know you can't miss a schedule in this industry and survive. You miss one and you're done, right? Schedule is king. So working with our customers and general contractors with their automated tools, I've been trying to focus in on what I call critical path of nowhere. Whenever you say critical path, everybody in the general contracting industry, their ears perk up, right? I believe that if you give us 4 dates on that schedule that may be 25 pages long and is so detailed and hardly ever right, if we're honest with each other, right?
Yeah.
But if you give us 4 dates, we can set the critical path that the manufacturing can meet up with the job site and be ready for install and not be a problem for the job site, and those 4 dates are around the approval process. So we can nail down not only what materials approve, but the quantity of it. So I need approved shop drawings and materials so we can start the procurement process. That's step 1. The next one is framing dates, so we can get our field dimensions. Everything that we build is custom. It's going to be for that job site specific, so we've got to be on site and be able to measure it. From there, it is whatever the predecessor is for our install, which is either prime and first coat, ceiling grid, or typically the 2 that you see, maybe flooring. It's one of the 3 is the driving factor for when we install, so that we can truly set our durations and make sure that we have a good true turnover day. You give us those 4 dates, and it's amazing what we can do on the manufacturing side and help protect our customers. But we've got to develop that relationship to be able to trust each other, that we're not just going to, well, I'm going to give you this to push you faster. Well, if I do that and I deliver it to the site and it's not ready, that doesn't do us any good either, because we've got to find a place to store it, got to find a place to protect it. We've got to, if I don't get the approvals fast enough, I can't order the materials, and we run into, manufacturing lead times is something before it even comes to us, much less when projects slide around. So I think those are the key things for our industry, are those 2. It's people, and it's working with our customer and their involvement of people and processes, and make sure that they understand what we need to do. A little of a long-winded answer, but I hope it at least made sense.
No, yeah, I think that's perfect. And for anybody who's listening, I think you just gave a masterclass in project management and managing your clients. And I think so many people that get into being project managers in this industry, or even owners who are functioning as project managers, get into an adversarial relationship with their client because they don't understand what you just outlined, which is 1, communicating up front what you need from your customer. And GCs operate on dates and dollars. Mm-hmm. And I think when you start to understand that, nothing else exists unless it's dates and dollars. And so you can send 1,000 emails, but unless it affects dates and dollars, they're going to ignore it for the most part, right?
Yep.
But if you say, hey, we're going to miss this date, suddenly they're like, whoa, I'm paying attention. Hey, it's going to cost more. Whoa, I'm paying attention. And so I think if you start on the right foot, like you just said, hey, there's 4 dates. This is all I care about. And if you help me hit these dates, we're going to have a successful project, and your project is going to be on time and on budget. Mm-hmm. If these dates move, it's going to affect dates and dollars. And so I think that that is so key. Like you said, materials improvement, shop drawing approvals, framing and you know, the predecessors, and, you know, mobilization, right? Hey, but when can we get in there? And that will allow us to get out of there. But if you start your projects going into it knowing that and saying, okay, we're going to set up this project for success to begin with, everything you guys need to do internally, you can work backwards from those dates and hit. But like you said, if you're operating on dates that are moved, you're going to be sitting with stored product, which costs you money.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite things to do is give tours of our facility and bring our customers in and show them what our processes are and help them understand why those 4 dates are so important. You know, let them look at my IntelliStore that has 4,000 panels in it right now, and I need to be able to stage those panels in front of a CNC tomorrow in the order that I need to cut in. And I need information to be able to do that in a timely fashion to then be able to then lay everything out. And you can see their eyes just start to open up. And it's probably one of the most rewarding parts of my position right now is being able to bring in those customers, architects, and everybody else. Let's come in and let's learn from each other, not be adversarial in the whole process. And how do we make each other better? Because that's the only way we're going to get better.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I've asked you a little bit about what you see coming in the future and what do you think advancements and changes. What do you think? And I have a feeling how you're going to answer this, but what core principles or values do you think will remain the same in our industry coming in the 5 to 10 years? It's
going to come back to people. We are a relationship industry. We've got to build a relationship with our people, relationship with our customers, relationships with our vendors, that we can navigate the changes that are happening, trust each other, and know that we all have an end goal. Mill Creek, our parent company, our core principle is, you know, building dreams for our families and our customers. And it truly is that. That's what we're doing every single day, is building that relationship, building that partnership, and finding a way to work together, because growth for growth's sake that's not what we're about. That's not what we want to do. We want to make everybody around us better, and realizing that we are a relationship-based industry, protecting those relationships, working through those relationships, working through the hard times and the good times, right? You know, you know, some of the best relationships I've ever built were over a project that went sideways at some point, and we worked through a problem and we got through it together. And those are some of my best long-standing, lifelong relationships in this industry. Started with a immense problem, a big problem, and we worked through it together. We hit the schedule, we hit the budget, whatever it may be. We worked through a manufacturing problem, and and we brought the team together. Those relationships typically started with something adversarial, and we found a way through it together as a team. So
awesome. Well, Chris, I appreciate you taking time out to share with us. I think you dropped some really great knowledge for those in the industry. I'm excited for people to hear about your story and see, once again, another unique path and story of people in this industry. That's the best part for me of doing this podcast, is being able to share with, especially those younger people in our industry, is how many unique stories there are and how many ways there are that you can build a career, build a life, and raise a family in the millwork industry. And we need more of that. And as you said, I think people are going to continue to be key. We don't have a shortage of machines or options for automation. We have a shortage of people. And I think that's going to continue to be the key for our industry. So if people are interested in finding out more about Wood Systems, the work you guys are doing, Mill Creek, what's the best way for them to do that or to reach out?
Definitely. I mean, we're very active on LinkedIn, our website, and follow us on those. And we try and post a lot. We post about our people, our culture, projects that we're working on. We try to stay very active in that. So look us up there and you can learn a lot about us. So
awesome. We'll link your websites and LinkedIn in the show notes. If you're a young person looking at going to college or getting into this industry, or if you're already at one of the tech programs like Pitt State, definitely go and see Wood Systems at your career fair. It's a great place to get your foot into the industry. Again, Chris, always a joy to be able to catch up with an old friend, and I appreciate you sharing your story today.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Do you want to stay up to date about industry insights, new content, and our community of millworkers? Go to ductworksmw.com to sign up for our newsletter. I'll see you in the next episode of Verify in Field.